friends, and welcome in to this Tuesday, March the 19th edition of Talking Sports at Work. I didn't think to look up and see what national day it is today. Oh well, it's National Talking Sports at Work Day, whatever. Hope everyone's having a great week so far. So I'm having a good week so far. We had our vacation scheduling thing today at work, where it's based on seniority and go down the line, and you get to pick which weeks you want for vacation. And I'm towards the bottom of the list, all really close to the bottom of the list. So normally I don't get the prime choices, but this today I actually got a couple of good options. I got the last week in August, which is also the week before Labor Day, so that's going to end up being a 10-day vacation that I get there. And then I like taking the week of Halloween off, just because it's always available. Nobody else ever gets it, and so I did it last year just for that reason, just because I didn't know what else to take. Anywhere near Christmas is unavailable, anywhere near Thanksgiving or the 4th of July, or, all that's already well gone before it gets to me. But this year, I got a couple that I wanted. So I'm in a good mood. We've got some stuff to talk about with college basketball. We've got some stuff to talk about with still NFL free agency. It's slowed down quite a bit, but it's still going. Now we're starting to heat up with all the draft talk, and that's always exciting. I love the draft. I love the offseason. So a lot to talk about there. And sorry, I'm trying to drive, and I keep seeing little notifications popping up on my phone. I'm gonna have to pull over in a minute and look because somebody's texting me. But I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I'll look at them in a minute. Anyway, so got a lot to talk about. The tournament is starting Thursday, and everyone's going to start filling out their brackets. I've already done one. I've actually got a reminder set on my phone because I didn't do it last year. I just got so sidetracked I didn't get around to it before the tournament started. So I'm going to try to fill out some brackets. I'm going to get on FanDuel or DraftKings, I think, and maybe enter some of those pools as well, some of the cheaper ones, and see if I can win any money out of it. So that's fun. And then the Titans had a little bit of bad news, losing out on Chase Young yesterday, but we've still got a lot going on, and definitely a lot to be excited about. So I'm kind of like, I don't know, I'm happy, but it's like tinged with a bit of, I don't know, it's kind of like what I was talking about a minute ago with the vacation thing today. It's exciting, but it's also tinged with, or there's this bittersweet element almost to it, because we still don't know. I still don't know if I'm going to have a job come these vacation weeks. We were supposed to have found that shit out by the middle of March. We're past the middle of March. Now we're expecting to hear next week what's going to be cut. From what I understand, it's still not for certain that we're going to lose anything. I thought that it was, but then I've heard some talk that maybe not, but I don't know. But I do know that my route feels like one of the top candidates that they would cut. So we'll see. I don't want to do this forever, but it is something that I really enjoy, and I need some regular income, obviously. And that's something too, and we'll do, I know I haven't done this much lately, but we're going to do a little TMI segment this morning, because I've got a lot of shit on my mind, and it's all in that realm. It's all, I was thinking about it yesterday, how, I'm trying to, I know that I spread myself too thin. I always do, and it's like I give 30% effort to this job. I give 30% effort to my schoolwork, and give 30% to the podcast and the YouTube channel, and give as much as I can to my kids, and those numbers are obviously not correct, but it's like I can't put my full energy into even 2 or 3 things, because I've just got so many things going on. But I have to. I don't have a choice. I mean, I obviously have no choice but to continue working a full-time job. I've got to continue to provide the best life I can for my kids. And, I want to spend as much time as I can with them, especially while they're really young. So, of course, that's, going to take up a lot of my time. I need to continue with school so I can continue to learn and get better as a writer. And, even if that doesn't pan out, so at least I'll have a degree where I can go get some better job that makes more money. And if I want to, do something and be successful, then I need to go ahead and continue with this podcast and with the YouTube channel and trying to build something there. It's, and I also enjoy that stuff. So, but it's frustrating because the YouTube channel it felt like growing really quickly, and now it's leveled off. And the problem is that I had, just paid a small amount to, put some of my videos to have as like ads on YouTube, so they would pop up on people's screens more. And I had those little promotions going for a couple of weeks, and during that time it was like blowing up with subscribers and views and everything. And now that period ended a few days ago, and since then it's like leveled off, and I've even lost a couple subscribers, I think. The views are still doing relatively well, but I'm not getting any new people in. And so that's very, very discouraging to think that the only way I can get people to watch this shit is to pay for it. I can't, even if I wanted to, I couldn't afford to keep doing that. The hope was that I would, do these promotions for a little while and sort of get the ball rolling, and then it would continue to grow from there. That's what I thought was happening, but maybe not. Maybe now that the promotions have ended, it's leveled off. I don't know. But at the same time, I can't dedicate nearly as much time to it as I want. I can't make it as good as I want because I don't have the fucking time. I just don't. So I don't know, man. And with this podcast, I don't think there are even, only a handful of people listening to this now. But, that's something too, that if I had the time, I could make this better. I could do more with it. I could edit these segments, and I could, throw in... Oh man, did it stop recording? Okay, no. I was afraid there for a second. I'd just been talking for no reason. But anyway, I could make this better if I had the time, but I don't. So what do? I want to be successful at something in life. And I actually wrote about this the other day, over the weekend. It was for a journal assignment that I had for this, it's called The Context of Writing, and it's basically about the writing industry, about publishing and stuff, and learning about agents and editors and publishing houses and all that stuff. And I feel like that was going to be a very useful class for me to take, because I don't know much about that, and I've always wanted to understand more about it. But there was this journal exercise that I had to write about one of the professionals, an editor or an agent or something, and I basically just ended up writing this big thing about how I'm torn about how I don't even know if I actually want to write for a living, because I know that I'm good at it, but every time I have to force myself to do it, I have to force myself to turn the TV off, or to stop what I'm doing, or to designate some time and go sit down and start writing. And then once I start, then sometimes I can get on a roll, but I don't even necessarily enjoy doing it all the time. I do sometimes, but it's just something that I know I'm good at, and something I know I could be successful at, but I have to force myself to get started on it, and I never can stick with anything long enough to actually complete anything longer than a short story. So how is this going to be my career? And then I think, well, if I was able to, if I had the time, if I didn't have to work a full-time job, then if that could be my career, well, then I could do it. But how the hell do you get started there? It's not like I can just go apply for a job as a novelist, I've got to first write something and then, send it in and hopefully have some success with it and go from there. But I can't make myself do that. I can barely make myself sit down and write for a few minutes. And then I can't stick with one idea for the time it takes to complete it. And I don't know. I'm really getting frustrated. And anyway, so I wrote this whole journal thing, and I meant to go back and look and see if the teacher had read it yet, because I wanted to get her input on it, about how I'm torn about this, and about how I'm also doing this podcast and this YouTube channel, and that's something that I feel like maybe I could be successful with, but I'm not even sure how good I'm going to be at it. And yeah. But, it's like, I want to be successful in terms of, I want to make a lot of money. That never used to be important to me, and then I had kids. That changes things. But now I want to have a lot of money so I can give them the best life possible and give them the best opportunities possible to do what they want with their lives. And you have to have a lot of money to do that. I also want to be successful just for myself. I want to make some sort of mark on the world. And, I'm behind by about a decade because I spent, 10 years of my life screwing around and being a useless drunk and addict and doing nothing. So I'm always playing catch up. And, I don't know, man. I just don't know. I don't know what I want to do. I thought, I can get into maybe sports journalism. I love sports. And so I started doing this podcast, and then, I'm not really going anywhere with this unless I really try to dedicate more time to it and promote it and make it better. But how am I supposed to do that when it's just something I do while I'm driving, and then I don't even have time to edit it, or do anything with it? I don't know. And like I said, it sucks because this kind of stuff never used to matter to me. I never used to want to be rich. I didn't really care about that, but then you have children and that totally changes. Then you realize, wow, yeah, if I'm going to give them any sort of decent life, I need a lot of money. So here we are. And, it's so that's where my head is. And then on top of everything, and in addition to that, another just added element of all this shit is this job is something I really enjoy. I've never enjoyed working before. I've always hated it. I've always spent every day just watching the clock, waiting to get the hell out of there, and then I might enjoy Saturday briefly, and then Sunday is I just spend the entirety of Sunday dreading going back to work. That was my working experience up until I started doing this. And, but the problem is, I know I don't want to do this forever. I can't be successful in the way that I want to. I can't get rich doing this. The best I can hope for is to continue doing this for steady income and then maybe make a lot of money on some sort of side hustle, which is what I'm kind of trying to do. But I'm torn because there's this thing that I really like this, but I know that I'm not going to necessarily, go anywhere with it. I don't even want to move up in this company because that would take away, I don't want to be a manager here, but that would take away the best part of the job. So here I am with this job that I like, but I know I can't stick with forever because it's not something that I'm going to get, really successful with. And now I might even lose it. Which could end up being a great thing for me, honestly. In the past when shit like that's happened, it's been like the impetus for me to grow. It's been the thing that's forced me to move into something better. And so maybe that's what will happen here if I lose this job. I don't know. Honestly, most likely that would happen. If I lost this job, it would probably just force me into, because I can get comfortable. Everybody does. And, pain and problems, that's what motivates us to get better. So, if I'm comfortable in this job that I enjoy, then maybe I'm stagnant. But if I lose this job, then it's going to force me to go and find something else and find something better, most likely. So that's probably what would happen. But it's also not, that's not a certainty by any stretch. So anyway, God, I bet that was fun radio right there, fun podcast to listen to, right? But there's what's going on in my mind today. We got some sports stuff to talk about. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, friends, welcome back to Talking Sports at Work. Excuse me. So, I was listening to the radio today, and they were discussing the importance of backup quarterbacks because that has been something that has become more and more important over the last few years, especially last year when it seemed like half the teams in the league were missing their starting quarterbacks by the end of the year. Um, and it got me to thinking about it, and for most teams, if your starting quarterback goes down, you feel like, well, that's it, it's over. But that hasn't been the case for a while, because we've seen teams like the Browns last year go on a great run with Flacco wasn't even on the team to start the year, and I think the sort of shining example that we all look at and that still gives fan bases and organizations hope in those situations is Nick Foles and what happened, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl a few years ago with him, because that's the thing that everybody can look at and say it can still be done. Because I don't even think Carson Wentz played in the playoffs at all. I think he got hurt before the playoffs started. So Nick Foles not only led the team to the Super Bowl, he was the Super Bowl MVP, and deservedly so. Like, he outdueled Tom Brady. He didn't just get the MVP because he was the quarterback of the winning team. He deserved it. That was one of the best Super Bowls of all time, and still probably holds a lot of, the offensive records for a Super Bowl. And it was with a backup quarterback. And so I think that's the thing that everybody can still point to and say, well, we know it can be done. And obviously that's the exception and not the rule. That's incredibly rare for something like that to happen, but we know that it's still possible. And so I think that's the one thing that can still give everybody hope. And you can point to other examples of teams being successful with a backup quarterback. I mean, the Colts were still good last year with Gardner Minshew. The Browns were excellent until they got torn apart by the Texans in the playoff. But yeah, so the backup quarterback is just a very, very important thing nowadays. And for the Titans, I'm not crazy about our situation. We have Mason Rudolph, and then I guess Malik Willis is still on the roster. But yeah, and that goes back to everything we're doing right now is building around Will Levis. And I love that. But at the same time, it's a little bit concerning. I mean, it's the right thing to do, but it is a little bit concerning just because we don't know for sure. I mean, I think we've all been operating under this assumption that he is the guy, that, he showed us enough that he is going to be our franchise quarterback. But in reality, there's still a lot of doubt about him. We're still not certain. I feel confident. I think most fans feel confident. Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan clearly feel confident, but we still don't know for sure. And hopefully he will put all those questions to bed next year. Excuse me, because, we haven't had a true franchise quarterback since Steve McNair. And this guy looks like the answer, but we still don't know for sure. And it just I was talking to somebody, I can't even remember somebody at work the other day. I think it was a friend of mine from work, anyway, a coworker, and he was saying that he was not a believer in Will Levis. Oh, I remember. He was saying he was not a believer in Will Levis. And I've heard that from a lot of people, and I get it. I did not like Will Levis at all going into the draft. I did not think that he was, a top 10 caliber pick that everybody was talking about him with. And then we saw he ended up falling into the second round. But then once he actually got onto the field on an NFL team, he looked excellent for a lot of it. And I still believe that the offensive line was by far the biggest problem on the team last year. And if we continue to improve that, I think we'll see Will Levis really thrive. We're giving him more weapons, clearly, with now the addition of Calvin Ridley. I think we can continue to, and now Tony Pollard, who can also be a weapon in the passing game, as can Tajay Spears. So the offense is definitely getting better. And we're clearly planning on drafting somebody for that left tackle spot. At 7 overall. That seems to be the thinking, but based on how we've done free agency and not signed any tackles. But, that's not even the only need on the offensive line. but it is obviously the biggest one. So I'm still hoping for Joe Alt there. But if he's gone, then I assume we would take Fashanu, who has, through the roof potential as well. But either way, this offense should be significantly better next year. And I kind of got off topic there. I started by talking about backup quarterbacks and then ended by talking about the Titans and the offense. But anyway, um, another little bit of bad news from yesterday is that Chase Young signed a 1 year fully guaranteed deal with the Saints, which was honestly, when I saw that deal, my first thought was, well, hell, I figured we would have given him that, but I guess he didn't even visit with us because he was scheduled to visit with us after the Saints. So that must have been where he preferred to go anyway. But the other thing it made me think of is it reminded me of the Jadeveon Clowney situation. And if you look at it, Chase Young is very similar. I mean, not necessarily so much as a player, but Jadeveon Clowney was number 1 overall pick. Chase Young was number 2 overall pick. Jadeveon Clowney never really lived up to his potential, but he's battled injuries and he flashed greatness at times. And he ended up on another team briefly being traded. And then as a free agent, we signed him to a 1 year, I believe it was $12 million deal. And he was a complete bust. Now Chase Young is a guy who had unbelievable potential, flashed it at times, but never really lived up to it, battled injuries throughout his career, was traded to another team, and then hit free agency just exactly the same as Jadeveon Clowney, and then ends up with almost the same contract with the Saints. So it reminded me of that situation a lot and makes me kind of think, okay, maybe it was better that we didn't. But, 1 year deal, it's not like it was going to be that much of a gamble. So I still wish that we would have. But maybe he's not that good. If he was as good as you hope he is, as his potential, then the 49ers would have never let him go. So there's also that. But we do still need help there. And now, given the way that actually, you know what? I'm going to pause really quickly, take a break, and after that, I'm going to dive into some more stuff about our needs, the draft, and what to expect. Alrighty, hey friends, welcome back. So, I was looking at something yesterday, and it looks like the Titans still have the 3rd most cap space, even after the moves that we've made so far with Cushenberry and Ridley. We've still got I think it was just under 40 million. I can't remember exactly, but it's still a good amount of cap space. So you're hoping that we're still going to make some moves, and there are still some decent players out there. Excuse me, I'm not sure exactly I haven't looked at, any of the lists or anything over the last couple of days, but I know that there's still got to be some available talent out there. I saw that we were trying to trade for L'Jarius Sneed, and I don't know. I don't feel like he's, that one of those top shutdown corners, but I feel like he's on the very next tier of being a really good guy, a number 1 corner that, you could put over there and feel good about. And apparently his asking price is what has stalled these things. And it's also what stalled his extension with the Chiefs. He's expecting a lot more than anybody's willing to give him. So now the Chiefs tagged him and they are trying to trade him. Apparently it's us and the Colts were the 2 teams mentioned that were trying to trade for him. But the problem is he's expecting too much on an extension. So it would end up costing us draft capital to get him. You got to think that he would cost us probably a third or better. And it would also cost us a lot of cap space. So I'm not sure that I love that. He is a name. He is a good player. And so, we need as much help as we can get on this roster. But at the same time, I don't know that he's worth as much as he would cost in terms of money and draft capital to acquire. So, but if we do trade for him, then I'm sure I'll be happy. He's definitely a really good player. And if we're able to get him for not a crazy trade price, then I'll be really happy. But like I said, I would expect him to I don't think they would take less than a third round pick for him. And right now, we don't have a third round pick for this year because we used it to trade up for Levis last year. But yeah, I mean, if we're able to get him for lower, a fourth round pick or something, then yeah, I'd say go for that. Especially if his, extension price isn't just crazy unrealistic. But now looking at the roster, the offense is actually in a much, much better position already with the addition of Cushenberry and Ridley, and Pollard as well. Now, still, going into free agency, it felt like our needs were offensive line above all else. And then the next one was wide receiver. And then after that, it was going to be defense, specifically edge rusher, defensive line, and cornerback. Now we've addressed the receiver situation because I do think Treylon Burks can be a very good number 3 receiver. And if Ridley and Hopkins are going to be your number 1, number 2, not necessarily in that order, but those are going to be your top 2. I think Treylon Burks could be a very good number 3. So our receiver room is already much better than it was, I think, with the addition of Ridley. And DeAndre Hopkins stayed healthy for almost all of last year, which surprised me. So if he's able to do that again next year, then we'll be in a good spot. The offensive line, like I said, you expect us to address that left tackle spot with the 7th overall pick. So then you still wonder, you're not sure who's going to be playing that right side. I guess the assumption is it would be Nick Petit-Frere. I guess that's the assumption right now. It could be Radunz. It could be somebody else. But the left tackle spot is definitely still wide open and needs to be addressed. And then if we could get somebody else in free agency or a later round pick to play right tackle, that would be good too. But right now you got to think that's going to be addressed there at number 7. And then after that, I think our needs are edge rusher. We need somebody to go on the other side of Harold Landry, who honestly, he missed all of year before last. And then last year did not look like him, the guy we paid all that money to. He started heating up once, about halfway through the season and looking better, but he still never looked elite. So hopefully he'll get back to being a really good player. And we need somebody to go on the other side. We also need more interior defensive line help. I know that we were trying to go for DJ Reader, but obviously that didn't work out. But right now, that defensive front basically consists of Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons, 2 very, very good players, obviously, but you can't play with only 2 guys up there. So we need help there, and we need help in the secondary, particularly another corner. Now that Murphy Bunting's gone, I really like Roger McCreary. I think he's an underrated player, but again, we need somebody else back there as well. So I think now after the offensive line, those are now our top 2 priorities going into the draft. And now still guys out there that I assume that we will sign to, if nothing else, add depth, because this roster is a mess. I mean, we need help at a lot of spots. But right now, with after what the moves that we have made in free agency, which I really like the moves that we've made, it feels like our needs are now still offensive line, specifically left tackle, number 1. Then after that, it's defensive line / edge rusher, or, defensive line and edge rusher and corner. So I expect us to address all of those needs in the first, 4 rounds of the draft. Anyway, so we've still got, how far away? We've still got over a month till the draft. So still lots of time to see the pro days and have guys climb up and fall down draft boards, and plenty of stuff to talk about between now and then. There was one other thing that I wanted to talk about, and really briefly, I just want to mention how I'm so sick of Jets fans. They are the most delusional people, I feel like, on the planet. I was listening to the radio this morning, and I ended up on Fox Sports, which I only ever end up on there if everything else is on commercial. And, of course, there was a Jets fan on there, not a call-in, one of the hosts, saying that he believes the Jets are definitely the best team in the AFC East this season. And it's like, what? But he said because of the moves that they've made in free agency so far, that makes them the best team in the AFC East. No, and his reasoning was they've gotten better, and Miami and Buffalo have both lost players and lost talent, whereas the Jets have added good players. But there was such a gap between Buffalo and Miami and the Jets last year that it doesn't matter. Even if the Jets got a little bit better, they're still not close. Because I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing 17 games next year. He's 40 years old. He made it into how many plays last year? Now, I don't think he'll get hurt week 1 again, but I don't see that guy lasting that long. Remember, a big part of his game was based on his athleticism for most of his career. He's not Tom Brady. He's not a statue back there. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But as soon as he goes down again, the Jets season is over again. And not to mention the fact that that is the most dysfunctional organization in professional football. And there's no reason to think that that's changed because everybody's still there. Robert Saleh, the guy who has just bowed over and given all control to Aaron Rodgers, is still supposedly the head coach. Woody whatever's still the owner. Whoever the GM is still the GM. They're still a totally dysfunctional, terrible organization. I don't know why you would be optimistic about this year, but I guess that's what being a fan is, right? Why would I be optimistic about the Titans? Well, I mean, we are going to be better next year. I don't know that we're going to make the playoffs, but I do think that we're going to be better, and I hope that we can contend for a playoff spot. Anyway, so I'm going to take a quick break, talk about one more thing, and then we'll call it a day. Hey, friends, back again. So, excuse me. We have the NCAA tournament starting this week, and lots to be excited about there. Now, what I'm going to tell you here is as soon as I started bragging on the Vols, I think every time this year that I have bragged on the Vols on my podcast, they have lost the next game. So I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to, in fact, say I don't know what the hell to expect from them because it looked like we were the hottest, best team in basketball about a week and a half ago. We had the hardest 4-game stretch that anybody else, the hardest 4-game stretch to close the season of anyone in the country, playing 4 teams that were ranked in the top 20 to close the season, 2 of them on the road. And the thinking was, that if we're able to, my thinking was, and I even heard people talking about it on TV as well, if we were able to go 3-1 in that stretch, then we were going to be great and probably still end up with a number 1 seed. So what happens? We end up going 3-0. And the teams I was most worried about were Alabama and Auburn, who though were the first 2 games in that stretch. And we beat both of them. We beat Auburn at home, beat Alabama on the road. Then we go to South Carolina and win. And it looks like we are rolling into the tournament. We're going to get a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. We might win the SEC tournament as well, although I was honestly just wishing we could skip the SEC tournament because who cares and all we can do is hurt ourselves. But then the Kentucky game happens. We lose to Kentucky at home. And the only reason why I think we didn't immediately lose consideration for the number 1 seed is the way that game ended in the last 2 minutes, where we came back from double digits down and forced 2 turnovers and had an opportunity, an open 3 there to send it to overtime, but Triple J missed the 3. But the way we ended that game, the only time we actually played well in that game was the last 2 minutes. I think that saved face for us a little bit. So then we go into the SEC tournament, and I'm thinking, we just need to win a couple games. We don't even need to win the tournament, but as long as we win a game or 2, we'll be fine. We'll still get that number 1 seed. Because also, when we lost to Kentucky, Arizona lost as well, and they were the team at that point that we were, competing with for that final number 1 seed. They lost to USC, so that totally knocked them out of the running. But now UNC was going on a little bit of a run at this point. And then what happens? We go to the SEC tournament, lose right away. And honestly, if we had just won that one game, we very well could have still had a number one seed. And we lose to friggin' Mississippi State. And in what was basically a home game, because we're playing in Nashville. Yeah. So I don't know and what was weird is they beat us at our own game in that one. They outworked us. They outmuscled us. They played better defense than we did. And we deserved to lose that game. And so, I don't know. But that ended up costing us a number one seed, because North Carolina went on a roll and beat Duke at the end of the season and then won a couple games in their conference tournament. And so that got them the number one seed. And now we end up with the number two. So here's the thing. If you had told me at the beginning of the season that the Vols were going to end up with the number two seed in the NCAA tournament, I'd be thrilled with that. I think pretty much every Vols fan would have been thrilled to hear that. So I don't want it to sound like I'm unhappy about it. It's just that given where we were expected a week ago to be, it's a disappointment. It is. And it really starts to make you think, with all the talk about Rick Barnes' teams can't succeed in March. As soon as it turns March, we start screwing up, it seems like, and here we go. So it's concerning. And even Connect in those two games. Well, no, he actually went on. He played really well, I think, against Kentucky. But against Mississippi State, he couldn't make anything. So I don't know, man. It is. This is about to cut out. For some reason, there goes the Bluetooth and the. All right, hey friends, sorry about that. I don't know if I've ever said this before. Don't ever buy a Chrysler Pacifica. These vehicles are horrible. That's what we drive in. We ended up in these rental vehicles because somehow it was cheaper to have them than to maintain our own fleet of vehicles. So anyway, that's what we end up in. And for some reason, at least a couple of times every day, this whole system starts screwing up, and the radio Bluetooth cuts out, the screen goes off, as something happens a couple times a day. Anyway, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, I'm worried, but at the same time, we've got a number two seed. That's great. We're in a good position. We're still one of the best teams in the country. But it is frustrating because if you look at where that final four seed, where North Carolina ended up, that looks like they've got one of the easier paths to the final four. Then you look at our bracket, we're in there with Purdue as the number one seed, a team that already beat us once this season and that we've just always had problems against. For years now, it seems like Purdue is the team that we end up struggling against and that ends up knocking us out of the tournament at least a couple times over the last few years. So we end up with Purdue and, a team that now, if we play them again, I feel like we would beat them. But when we played them, it was very, very early in the season. It was okay. Hey, friends, I can't blame that one on the vehicle. That was because I had a timer set on my phone. So, anyway, yeah, when we played Purdue, it was very early in the season. It was before we had really figured out how it was going to work with having this elite scorer, Dalton Connect, with the team. And I feel like if we played them again now, we would beat them. But, I am worried about the way we've performed the last couple of games. So, I don't know. And then in addition to that, we'll have to probably beat Creighton, who is probably the best number three seed there is. A really, really strong team that I feel like would give us problems just to get to the Elite Eight and Purdue. Excuse me. So even though it's great, we got a two seed, it sucks given that we just blew the opportunity to have a one seed and that everybody expected us to have, as recently as a week ago. And it also sucks the way where we ended up, because it feels like this is one of the tougher brackets. This is one of the tougher regions, given that it's us, it's Purdue, it's Creighton. I can't remember who else, but I remember, looking at it and thinking, man, if you compare our path here to what we could have had in that spot where North Carolina is, that sucks. But you know what? It's fine. I mean, the tournaments never go the way it's expected. It's not going to be chalk. We might not end up having to play Creighton or Purdue, or we might get knocked out in the first round. You never know. So, but I remember last year looking at the situation. I think we ended up with a 3 seed last year, and I remember thinking, man, this is about the worst possible position we could have ended up in. It was a 3 or a 4, I can't remember. But I remember looking at our path. It was going to include a red hot Duke team. It was going to include, I don't remember who else, but looking at it and thinking, man, this is the absolute worst position we could have ended up in. And then we end up playing really well until I guess it was the Sweet 16. We ended up beating that really hot Duke team, and we ended up looking really good. And so things totally shook out differently than what was expected. And that's going to happen again this year. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be March Madness. So, it's folly to try to predict exactly the way things will go in the NCAA tournament. But I know that we're still one of the best teams in college basketball. This is the best opportunity we've had to win a national championship in basketball in my lifetime. And I'm very excited about the possibilities. So, anyway, that'll be my show for today. I hope everyone's had a great week so far. I hope you have a great rest of the week. I am off tomorrow, so I'm hopefully going to have some time to work on the podcast and the YouTube and try to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my life. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. Love you. Bye.